Simon Bridges' latest unabridged column examines New Zealand's lucky place at the bottom of the world and why we're actually in a better state than we think. Simon, what's led you to this conclusion?
Well, look, I'm not suggesting that there's not a lot of problems in the world or in New Zealand. I mean, there's a huge amount. If you look at the world, it can be very depressing. We've got missiles going into Japanese waters from Korea. We've got a war in the Ukraine. We've got climate change gridlock and virtual battle between the rich and the poor world. Look, even in New Zealand, I'm not suggesting economically it's not incredibly grumpy. We've got cash rate hikes happening as we speak with the intention of dampening down the economy. But you put all that in context, and what we also have, I think, is the most remote developed country in the world, and relatively speaking, I think probably the safest country in the world right now, a real safe haven. And I also would make the case that, and I appreciate a lot of people will have a different view or interpretation of the facts. I also make the case that economically, if you look at those core inflation numbers or a bunch of other metrics as well, even growth, whereas, say, the UK looks absolutely like it's in a recession, has very high inflation. It's just one compare and contrast. In New Zealand, we still have growth, and I think relatively speaking, our sectors are going along kind of okay to quite well, actually, despite, as I say, some of the business grumpiness that's out there. So I'm making the case that, maybe for once, Fred Dagg is right. We don't know how lucky we are.
It struck me in your column that you were quite complimentary about the Prime Minister and New Zealand's economy. Do you think you would have been in quite the same position if you were still leader of National?
Probably not, but I think what is true is I'm never going to make the case that any government, and not this one, is perfect. People will point to all manner of very significant issues and lack of action on all manner of significant issues. I do make the point, though, if you're looking around right now, we're in the middle of kind of set pieces internationally in Asia, climate, I've mentioned, G20. That is an arena where Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern performs with a deft hand. I also make the point in the column, I think it's almost worth its own column, but I only do one every fortnight, that the new Aussie Prime Minister and administration, and you might think again, as someone who was blue and they are red, I might not say this, but looks to be very good internationally, and actually a very good government for New Zealand around their international positioning, around their positioning, for example, on our immigration 501 settings. They look like they'll give us some relief in a way we didn't see from the last Liberal government, or indeed the governments before that either.
Do you think people in New Zealand who complain tirelessly about the state of the country are actually taking too insular a view and should read a bit more international news?
I mean, there are things to complain about. I make the point in the column, whether it's health, education, crime, half a dozen other things, there are very real issues here. So again, I don't deny that. What I suppose I'm saying, though, is that in the end, on the big things, in a world that's got really deep-set troubles geopolitically and economically, New Zealand's well placed. I feel like we might just possibly be glass half full, I acknowledge, but coming into some very good years on the back of our sort of strategic advantage, really through good luck more than anything, but strategic advantage we have around our safe haven status, most developed remote country in the world, and also economically, just a sense that our big sectors, I think, are going to continue to track along quite well when many other countries are going to have some very significant problems.
So what's the message in this for business?
Look, I think one message is, New Zealand's got problems. Yep, we've got an election next year, and people will obviously make their choice off the back of that. Kind of irrespective of who or what wins, and what blocks of parties come together, I think there is a lesson there for business, which is kind of along the lines of something I've been thinking about quite a bit. Business needs to get on and solve issues. We can't necessarily rely either internationally or domestically on governments to solve the big stuff around climate, very hard, around healthcare provision, around housing. I'm coming increasingly to a view that, look, the power is in businesses' hands, both individually and collectively, to get on, to provide the innovation, so on. And New Zealand businesses are certainly capable of that.
Simon, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.